Hello fellow cinephiles, Film Guru here. Today I'm reviewing On the Basis of Sex. This was directed by Mimi Leder and stars Felicity Jones, Armie Hammer, Justin Theroux and Kathy Bates. And it's the story of Ruth Bader Ginsberg, who is very well known and went on to become Supreme Court Justice of America, and only the second woman to achieve this great honour. The film really focuses on her college years, only being one of 8 other women accepted to Harvard Law School. It really looks at the personal struggle she goes through to try and accomplish her goals and becoming a lawyer, and how her husband becomes ill, and he is also a law student as well at Harvard, and she has to cover his courses as well as hers, and it really looks at how much she has to go through to accomplish so much. Ultimately, after 3 years not quite getting to the last year of Harvard Law School, her husband gets a job in New York, and they ultimately have to go and move there, and she really wants to transfer and continue and get her Harvard law degree through Columbia, but they won't allow her to do this. So ultimately she finishes her law degree at Columbia and starts to struggle to find work. It's really hard. They don't want to hire women because of the way things were, and this was in the 1950s. And it was just a real struggle for her, and she ended up taking a job she didn't ultimately love, but in order to, support and provide for her family. Her husband also had a job and was supporting the family as well, but it was really about her trying to find her way. And ultimately, she becomes a professor at Columbia, professor of law. But it's really a struggle for her in a way. She feels like she's doing well in inspiring a younger generation of free thinkers and trying to fight the laws of things, especially laws based upon sex and gender. And she really feels like she's doing something here. She has a young daughter who's now 15, who's become part of the movement and was now in the 70s. And ultimately she's given a particular case about discrimination against gender, being a male. And the case ultimately looks at how a single man, is looking after his ailing mother, and he's unable to receive payments or benefits for doing this, to stay home and look after her because he's not a woman. And she ultimately takes on this case, and this is one of many cases that form her ultimate career and lead to her being nominated as Supreme Court Justice. This was an interesting film to me. It was an interesting story about a person I didn't know a lot about. And it was about a very driven and strong female who fought her way through everything in order to get to where she wanted to be. All the struggles she went through, all the difficulties that she suffered through her life to get where she needed to get. I found that kind of really interesting. It only focuses on one point of her life, ultimately, her college years into her adult years, becoming a professor, and the case that ultimately led her to become part of a movement of trying to change the laws. I think Mimi Leder it's a solid film. Look, it's a solid film. The performances are solid. I found the story the most interesting part, and most of the acting was solid. I think Felicity Jones does a solid job. Armie Hammer's okay. Armie Hammer's playing Armie Hammer. Justin Theroux does a solid job here. I think his character's kind of interesting. He doesn't have a lot of screen time, but the moments he does have are pretty good. Sam Waterston makes a great appearance, playing a role out of character for him as the dean of Harvard Law School, and he sort of looks down on the women as part of it and believes that if they wanted to become lawyers, there has to be good reason for him to have given them a position there at Harvard Law School over a man. And I thought that was kind of interesting for him as a character. I think he's a really solid actor and he's done some great work, but it's just a very different role for him, but I'm impressed with his performance here. But I think the actress I thought was really good was Celia Spini. I think she plays Ruth's daughter, and I think the relationship she has with Felicity Jones on screen is really fantastic. And I think it's a driving force. She's sort of hard on her daughter, but she ultimately sees that she's become a strong, independent woman, and she's very inspired by her, and her daughter sort of inspires her to go on and seek the things she wanted to do to begin with, to change the world through the laws, and to get back in the limelight and chase the things that she's after. And I think this is really great, and I think Celia does a really fantastic job here. This is the second film I've seen her, and she was in Bad Times El Royale, playing Dakota Johnson's sister in that film, and she's kind of interesting in that, but I think she's a really solid performance here. There are things about it I didn't ultimately love, and thought could have been better. One of the big things is I really think they should have focused on her whole life, not just a small portion. Now I know that is very difficult to do with a biofilm, especially when you have 2 hours, and to tell such a long story is very difficult. But I would have liked to at least seen the film go towards the Supreme Court justice stuff. I would have liked to seen how that transpired rather than written words on the screen. It's just, to me, it just feels like a TV movie. It could have been a lot better. And it just feels too much like a TV movie than a theatrical release film. And it's a film that you could probably watch on DVD rather than going to the cinema, which is unfortunate because it's a very strong and interesting story, but it's just ultimately told with nothing extraordinary about it. It feels very Hollywood, and I think that detracts from the story quite a bit, making it too much of a Hollywood story, a little cliched in parts. Sort of doesn't have a lot of oomph or a lot of kick, and it's sort of by the numbers type of film, that vein, where we see her transform, become strong and strong, and then she gets the opportunity to become, to have a case and to present it, and how she struggles with that, how she's never done that before, and how it's a big important case for her, and how she struggles in being that and being able to speak. And I kind of like this aspect of it. It shows her, it humanizes her quite a bit, and that her struggle and her trying to prove herself but being too hard on herself and not to be able to do what she thinks she can do, and then ultimately able to do it in the end. And she's sort of a character that seems full of regret that she didn't accomplish the things she wanted. She settled for things rather than fighting onwards, and I thought that was kind of interesting as well. Look, it's a fine movie. I enjoyed aspects of it. There's things that could have been better. It wasn't brilliant, but it was engaging enough for me to watch it and to sort of get behind the character and seeing what she accomplished in her life, even in this short period. With her character too, the other criticism I have is we're just sort of thrown into this world. And being a person who didn't know a lot about Ruth Ginsberg, it's kind of difficult to get a sense of her through this film. They just sort of throw you in, and it's the idea you're meant to know who she is, but I hadn't really heard of her before, which is bad on my part, I do realise, but I just never heard of her, and I never really got a sense of her until later towards the end of the film, because I didn't really know who she was or what the importance of her in the world was. And I think this was something they could have really spent a bit more time on developing the character for people who didn't really know who she was, so we could experience it in that way. Final verdict. Look, if you like a solid film about a strong female overcoming the odds and becoming what she wants to become, I think you might enjoy this. I don't think it'll be for everyone. And like I said, it's too much of a telly movie, so that might turn people off. But it's a film I think people should watch, should get a little bit out of, even though it isn't fantastic. I'm going to give, on the basis of sex, 3.5 out of 5. I thought it was good, but could have been better, and it was interesting enough that kept me engaged throughout the film. Anyway, that's all from me today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit subscribe down the bottom. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.